Welcome! Let's set up vCenter HA. Start by clicking on your vCenter and going to the Configure tab. Here's where you'll find the link to set up vCenter HA. It'll create a passive and witness node to ensure that if the active node should fail, that there's something to take over in its place. Start the wizard by clicking Set up vCenter HA. You'll begin by looking at your active node. Click Browse to find the network that you'll place the replication portion of the traffic on. Now notice your setup of vCenter. You've got your production network for virtual machines. In my case, it's a standard switch. And now you've got your replication network for the back-end replication. vCenter HA will create an anti-affinity rule in DRS to separate the virtual machines. Now go to the passive node, edit that to set up the primary network as well as the replication network. You've got the name of your passive vCenter. You've got the location in your inventory. You've got the cluster on where your vCenter is going to run. The data store. It's a good idea at this point to choose a different data store from your primary. Choose the management network. Make it the same as your active vCenter. Again, in my case, a standard switch here. And the back-end replication network. Do the same thing for your witness node, except the witness node is not on your production or management network. It's just on the back-end replication network. So here you're selecting the compute resource and the location in vCenter's inventory, the data store, and again, the replication network. Once you click Finish and then Next, give the IP addresses for all of the nodes. Again, notice that you're on the backend or replication network where all of the network transfers are going to happen between your vCenters. Give them IP addresses on that backend network. Select the subnet mask and default gateway if applicable. And now at this point, the system begins cloning your active vCenter to create your standby or passive and your backend and your witness node. Notice the clock in the bottom right-hand side of my screen. This takes a few minutes. Now that my passive and witness nodes have been created, it takes another couple of minutes to ensure that vCenter HA is up and running. We're going to look at the performance tabs so that you can see that the active node has actually got some resource utilization here, but the passive and witness nodes have almost none. You'll notice CPU and memory way down there at the bottom. Now let's have a look at the capacity and usage tab in the summary of each of the VMs. Notice almost no memory and very little CPU. is being used. The witness node has actually just one vCPU and 1 gig of RAM. We're not quite up and running yet, but a few minutes later, you'll see that the status on the active, passive, and witness nodes are fully ready to go. Notice the management IP is grayed out on the passive node because its link, its virtual NIC is not active. What I'm going to do here is suspend the active node to simulate a failure. In a couple of seconds, your vCenter will go down. And here it is down. And a little bit later, the standby node begins starting all of its services. See, several of these services are starting. Within a few minutes, your standby node becomes your active node, and you can log back into vCenter Server. You'll now note that under vCenter HA, it says that there's a node that's down, that the appliance isn't replicating, and Postgres isn't replicating, and that you've got a passive node that is down, and that the old passive node is now your active node. Let's power the old active node back on. Within a few minutes, it'll notice that the old active node is now the passive node, and you don't have any more errors under vCenter HA. You'll note that the passive node has actually begun doing some work, and that the standby node has very little utilization. Now, if you don't want your vCenter passive VM to actually be your active VM, you can initiate a failover so that the cluster looks normal.